No chains can hold it. No tomb can seal it. All new terror. Nameless. Fleshless. Deathless. Welcome back to Entertainment Rebooted. Specifically, welcome back to another episode of Cinema Revisited, the Universal Monster movies, where we are watching all of the classic Universal Monster movies and talking about the good, the bad, the ugly, and the iconic, as well as being complete and total film nerds and just throwing out into the universe that Universal, we are available to be hired to remake these movies. Please. Tonight's film was none other than 1944's The Mummy's Ghost, starring none other than Lon Chaney Jr. as the mummy himself. I am joined, of course, by my esteemed co-host, DJ. Say hi, DJ.
Hello.
So, DJ, we're talking about good, bad, ugly, iconic. But before we do all of that, just because these films are older than our grandparents, what's the plot to The Mummy's Ghost?
Same one as the last one.
So there isn't a plot.
This continues This continues 30 years. I think they said 30 years after the last one. The last one ended in the burning down of the house and the destruction of all the family of everyone who was involved in the original Mummy story. Not the very first one. The Boris Karloff one is a separate continuity. From the second Mummy film on is a continued continuity.
Yeah, Mummy's Hand.
The Mummy's Hand.
I believe. Yeah.
So the Mummy's Hand has a continuity of they use Kharis, the mummy, as a servant, and they control him with Tana leaves. Mm-hmm. That is the plot of the last two films, just over time. This one happens later, and it is the scientist who was involved in the discovery of it the last time is talking to students about, and basically summarizes the previous film. And they talk about how this is a mummy as scientific fact, and not really a jock, but kind of like the cool kid of the group is dating an Egyptian girl who's having like some weird flashes and fantasies and things and kind of like ailments happening to her at the same time that the cult that controls the mummy is sending one of their agents to get the mummy in the body of the princess bat. Ananka? Ananka.
Princess Ananka and Kharis.
And Kharis, yeah.
Kharis is...
he's going to recover both of them. And so he goes to America. The mummy... he smells the Tana leaves coming from the professor as he burns them. He learns the secret, uses them. Mummy comes for him.
Well, instead of being a servant, he like murders him.
Yeah. He goes and just straight kills him because he's not part of the cult. And the Egyptian girl friend, she passes out, and then
she passes out after also kind of being summoned. So she passes out outside of the house of the professor.
Yep. As when he dies. And then the rest of the film, there's like a weird connection between these two as everyone realizes the mummy's coming back. The police, the sheriff and everything. And there's later an inspector that comes from the larger town nearby. All get involved in trying to take down the mummy. And it culminates in him, the Kharis, retrieving the girl because they realize that she's the reincarnation of the princess.
It's where her spirit went to rest.
Yes, went into her.
Yeah, went into her.
And then he takes her, and then they literally climb into a swamp and then just disappear. And everybody walks away.
And not just disappears into a swamp. I mean, they watch her slowly go under the water, but because she's old and wrinkly and gross, they just decide, well, she's dead, and walk away.
Basically.
Very quickly, like within 20 seconds, that dude straight up like mourned for 4 seconds. Wait a minute. She's old and ugly. Well, we're getting beers? Yeah? Mommy's gone.
Yeah, that's it. That's the movie. Most of the actual plot in and of itself is the mummy attacking people trying to capture him, and like the inner dialogues of people as they discover it. That most of the plot is just dialogue. It's a very dialogue heavy film.
It is very much dialogue heavy, but I mean, there's not that much action that you can really get out of a mummy with one good arm until the end and one good leg until the end. Not explained how he suddenly gained the ability to use his right arm, something that he hasn't been able to use in 3 films, but dang it, she was hot.
The plot demanded him to use a ladder, and darn it, he learned how to do it.
He learned how to do it and carry his love.
All right,
as
John.
she dissolves into old age, as we all are.
So that is the plot.
Yep. Let's talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, and the iconic then. What is good about this movie, in your opinion, DJ?
Against the last one, it's actually a decent watch. I actually really liked the leads. The lead male and female, the I can't remember their names. I'm so bad with names, but the
only name I really remember other than Kharis is Peanut, the dog.
Yeah. But anyway, the lead guy and his girlfriend, the Egyptian girl, like they had actual chemistry, which is a problem we've noted in a lot of these films, that there's like a severe lack of chemistry with our leads. Mm-hmm. Not only is there good chemistry, he is a genuine, like really nice guy. A lot of the guys in these films, the lead guys are like jerks, or like, you know, they have like we talk about, like,
they come off either very callous or they have very little interest in the female lead, and they very rarely have chemistry.
Yeah. And they often come off rude and callous. If they do have some chemistry, they're often like red flaggy first. Like a lot of like bad character flaws involved. This had like they felt like real people with a real relationship, and at the end it felt a lot like it's a dark ending to this film. It's one of the few where like the villain actually wins, like the mummy gets what he wants.
Yeah.
And you feel it because you could tell he genuinely loved that girl, and that like hit him hard. In fact, you were kind of talking about the end where like he kind of gives up, but he doesn't. Like he was going to go in, and he was sitting there. Yeah. They dragged him away. Like picked him up and like pulled him away from that. Like, you can't go in there. Like, it's, yeah, she may not be dead, but we will be dead if we go to try and save her.
Well, they stop him as he's about to go in, and it's just like, it's certain death, this swamp. But the thing is that part of the reason that the ending really was kind of threw me off was honestly because he was genuine. He was going to go in, it seemed. And then one person's like, no, it's certain death. And then he gets a look at her as she's like descending into the water. And then he's just like, oh, she's out of sight. It's like object permanence. The moment she went under the water, he was just like, wait a minute. I need to find a new girlfriend. I'm empty.
Well, the problem is that's just where the film ends. Like, it doesn't even give him a chance to mourn. Like, he stands up, and then it gives the ending thing, and that's it. So, but I felt that was genuine with that. What about you? It's your good.
The good, I mean...
Are you soiled on mine?
It's what I do.
Your good is my bad.
I mean, I do agree with you. Like, the chemistry for the most part up until the end was good between the leads. I would say that probably... I know what I'm going to go with for my iconic of everything that's going on. I don't know. Good is just... It's hard for me to find one that's just like not necessarily like the best part. You do... You know, you kind of hit it on the head, I think, with that chemistry. A lot of these films just don't really have that. I guess it's just
there's some other
continuity.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I think the good is like it's very respectful of the previous films. They kept it in line. They didn't really change too much of the lore, but they explained it enough that it didn't feel like it was this new, fresh thing, but at the same time, it was still kind of a more fresh plot, different people. So I guess just the fact that it didn't outright add too much more to where the first three didn't make sense, but it added enough that it's like its own separate story.
It gave enough without crapping on the source material.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that they handled that well. It's a good sequel. It's a good continuance of this I guess like B-side series for the Universal monster movies.
Yeah, the Mummy ones are kind of treated like a B-side story.
Yeah.
We need another monster. The Mummy, bring him back.
But he's been dead for years. He's immortal. Just give him more leaves, more tea.
They keep doing it with Frankenstein. He's immortal. Just deal with it.
Pretty much. Okay, what about bad though?
Okay, so
I've already kind of said my bad.
Yeah, you will go first. Go ahead. Give.
No, man, that's the ugly part.
Oh.
The bad I would say is it kind of the bad is a bit of the ending, the fact that it's just like very quickly everybody just kind of walks away. It comes off as very anticlimactic because nobody seems to really mourn. They're all very stoic at the end. Like, sure, he seems like kind of heartbroken, but literally it's like the moment she goes under the water, it just turns off and they all get up and leave except for the dog, and the dog's literally sitting there looking super confused because everybody was there and now everybody left. And I think that it's bad. It's almost borderline ugly because the ending being an actual like true horror dark ending where it's like sometimes evil does win. Like the monster actually got what he came for. I think the ending it turns out bad just because of how quickly they wrapped it up, how quickly they turned around, and it didn't feel like they really had much of an impact. It was literally the moment that she was out of sight, the impact this woman had on all of their lives, as being part of this like small, academic community was just wiped out.
It snuffed it out like immediately.
Yeah. And they just walked away.
There wasn't a dying. It was an immediate fire's gone out just instantly. I feel like too a little bit when you were talking about that hit me too. Cause the part where where it just abruptly ended, but up until that part where like the whole town was like getting involved and you could feel like the tension like rising, and then it's just end. And you're like, what? Like comes by surprise. Even films like Dracula that ended abruptly don't hit quite as hard as that did. Well, very sudden.
Another thing too is how long was this movie? Actually, was it like 60 minutes, 70 minutes?
It felt shorter than some of the others. It really
felt super short because when it ended, I was like, you could have another half hour. Like it kind of felt like that where it almost feels like you could have had another half hour. This felt like a very short movie compared to even the last one. The last two have kind of dragged a bit.
This feels more like Dracula where it ended a lot more. Yeah, it was a lot shorter because I remember the original Dracula was like an hour. Like they were right about an hour or so. They're originally
it was like 76 minutes or something.
And they slowly got a little longer. This one felt really short.
Yeah.
And abrupt. It hit pretty hard. I'm with you there. My bad, well, to go on top of that, is actually the other characters besides the leads and like the Mummy. There's actually a lot of like cool, fun, smart decisions, but then fall flat. So one of the things that the Universal movies, we talked about this a little bit while we were watching it, do is the acceptance of the supernatural comes a little easier. There is some resistance, but especially after the third or fourth film in a series, like the Frankenstein films, all the people in Frankenstein know the monster is real. It's not a myth or a legend. They lived it. They remember him. So when a Frankenstein comes to the town, they're like, ugh. When the Mummy's brought up, everyone in the town remembers the last time this happened.
Right, and there's only like one or two people at the college that come off as a little skeptical where it's like, well, could it be a man who's dressed as a mummy?
Yeah.
But it's clearly like the one guy that's out of town because the rest of them pretty quickly are just like, well, actually, no, there's like this ancient ritual. I saw it. My grandmother saw it. And they wouldn't lie about this kind of thing. The government officials can be definitely trusted in the city of Van Meter, Iowa. Okay? It's a very similar concept.
Yeah, it's like everybody was aware of this thing, which was like really cool, and that's a thing that they normally do. And because of that, there's a lot less like stupidity. Like in modern horror films and in monster films, people make dumb decisions and just like act irrationally because of like fear or whatever. Mm. The Universal ones show a lot of aptitude. Like the Professor Van Helsing understanding Dracula and being able to fight him back. Yeah. The people fighting down the Frankenstein monster, like the people, they're aware of this stuff. What is bad about this film is that they have all the same stakes and everything and they understanding of that stuff. And then the people make really weird, dumb decisions and just die in the most... every time the scene shows where the mummy's like coming after them real slow and it's like shown to be really...
They crumple into fear against a wall or into a corner.
Yeah, it only happens once. The other one, you can tell they realized that wasn't going to work very well because all the other deaths like happen off scene.
Yeah,
they don't show them because it's like, oh yeah, turns out that this slow death thing just is weird, and that just comes across as just awkward and kind of trashy for me. In a world where people are accepting the supernatural understanding of it, a sudden fear comes over them and they just get strangled to death by the slowest moving monster ever.
I can definitely see
unless there's some supernatural power there, which is kind of implied, but
not enough to be like,
it just comes off kind of corny and weird. It's not awful, it's cheesy.
Yeah.
But it's worse than cheesy. It kind of pulls out of the immersion a little bit. That's really it. It's silly.
Yeah.
I can do cheesy. Silly is a little harder. Like cheesy comes across from like, the times, the technology, the ability. Silly is just bad character writing.
Yeah. I would definitely say, and especially because the silliness of the deaths are definitely a bit more they're not in line with how dark the ending is.
Yes.
Because when the ending ended, all of us when we were watching it we're like, wait, that's it? Is that actually how this is going to end? That's very dark. It doesn't fit because you're right. There's quite a bit of silliness with the fact that they're slowly chasing a slowly shambling corpse.
Yes.
I can definitely see why in the 90s when Stephen Sommer made the Mummy movie, he made a more of a supernatural force as compared to...
That was something that was even the 2017 one too. The Mummy was actually one of the good parts of that film. Like a supernatural special abilities make it a little more terrifying of an opponent. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Let's talk about ugly. So I kind of have a double ugly iconic. So
go ahead.
All right. So the ugly and the iconic. I'm going to start with the iconic. I would say that the priest was pretty iconic in this one. He looked very unsettling. He was well cast. The way he talked was definitely unsettling.
He also had a similar name to the original Mummy from the first film, and that kind of felt like where they were going with that. He had a look and feel and a name similar to the Mummy.
Yeah, his last name was Bey. His first name was like Arfus.
Yeah, it was really close to Ardith Bey, which was the Mummy from the first film. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it was just one of those things where he came off as this imposing force, and like I said, the tone that he set whenever he had his lines, the way he delivered it, the way he was very unsettling, and it was very subtle. Like a lot of his evilness comes off as just like little subtle gestures, little changes in his expression, and I would say that that's pretty iconic until it's ugly. That he literally falls into the exact same trope as all of the other priests, where they get obsessed with the love interest, either of the adventurers or of this ritual in this case. And literally he just abandons decades of institutionalized training. Yeah, like it's not really institutionalized. It's like he grew up in this religion.
He was inundated he was inundated with a very strict philosophy, and he abandons it the second he sees her. Which is exactly what happened the last two times. Every single time the priest falls for the girl and ends up betraying the mummy, and the mummy kills them every single time.
Yeah.
Which is fine, but I kind of feel like there should be a little more explanation as to, I mean, I guess, and older films like this did leave a lot to interpretation out of necessity, but it feels to me like what they're trying to show is like the priests always fall for her, because remember the mummy himself was also a priest in the same order.
And yes, it's a priest in the same order, and you can kind of have this supernatural thing where perhaps it's just she has this like there's like this supernatural kind of attraction, and you would think though that after having 3, because this is fourth
well,
in the series, right?
I would think and understand that honestly, and it canonically works, that none of these priests were ever discovered by the order, that they betrayed them because they were killed. Well, so they were never found. So it's not like they knew that their priests are constantly falling weakness to this.
I guess, but
I kind of feel like there should be a greater force involved, like another god is tricking them, like Set's being funny or something.
Well, maybe, but the thing too is that, like, yes, you can say that. Well, I mean, there's no real way for them to know that, all of their priests have fallen for the love interest in all these films. But at the same time, though, how did he know where? If that's the case, where they don't know what happened to the priests, how do they know where the mummy is at all times? How do they know how the stories ended? How did they know how to
the story
kind of train people to not fall for this? Because he has this whole speech, essentially, the old man
at the beginning
had essentially this whole speech where he's getting this priest ready for his ultimate mission, his quest for our great god Amun-Ra. And he knows a lot about like where the mummy's at, what happened to the mummy, what foiled the mummy's plan last time. So why wouldn't he have any idea what happened to his priests, the people that were talking to him, if he knows all the stories of how they were destroyed after the priest died to the mummy from falling in love with him?
I mean, obviously the straight answer is they didn't give it that much thought because they don't really give it that much strength ahead of it. But if I were to give it a lore reason that would actually work with it, it's that he's getting all this information secondhand because his priest is dead. So he's getting it from news and everything like anybody else would.
Yeah.
And so he knows that his priest was defeated, but he doesn't know that it was self-inflicted. That actually does explain it, and it's easy. Yeah, and yes, that is one of those cases where a little more exposition would be nice, because they are really exposition heavy and summarizing the previous film, but they don't actually tell you anything about the current film, like how people know things. But you can conjecture that everything he would have known, he could have learned from public media because it was all available.
Well, in that case, it probably would have come out in at least the first one, where the guy literally gets the girl at the end, the hero in the first movie gets the girl at the end, and they have a family together. You would think that part of the story would be we were able to foil him because of, his lust for not only power, but this woman.
Yeah, except for she didn't remember what
something
happened to her. He got in there after the priest had already gotten into a fight with the mummy.
Yeah.
And so he wouldn't even have known that she was what he was trying to do. Us as the audience know. But the heroes never actually see. If you notice, he got killed off screen before they even got here in this one. The previous one, the guy burned down with the house. None of these times do any of the living characters who survive witnessed the priest lusting over the female.
Well, the female that was being lusted
except for she's unconscious every time. The last two that ended up being like alive afterwards were unconscious during the entire event. So they didn't witness it or see it happen or hear what he was saying about them.
I guess it's just one of those things where if you're going to recycle.
Now this one, she was alive for it, but she got struck into the swamp with the mummies. So.
Well, right, but I know it's just one of those things that as an audience, we've had this like recycled foil the last 4 times, and I understand like having a common weakness like a kryptonite to defeat evil, but it's getting old at this point. Well, that's why it's partly ugly. It's just like it's getting very old. You have a priest who, he's already kind of falling into a lot of the same tropes as the last priest, but his portrayal is the best so far. That's why I say he's iconic. But
yeah,
the fact that he's falling into all the exact same tropes and he's becoming the exact same person,
I wouldn't actually mind him like falling into the trope so much, except for he does it so suddenly and so quickly and then is immediately killed.
Yeah.
At least the other times they had a little bit of time to like feel that betrayal before getting burned. That was instant. It was instant betrayal, death, like that.
Yeah.
And he just gets thrown away.
Yep. All right. How about you? What's ugly and iconic, or iconic Yes, Iconics last. Ugly and iconic. I switched the order.
Because you switched the order, everything's confusing.
It's because I'm pure evil and I crave chaos.
For me in this one, the ugly is actually the Mummy. Despite the fact, I mean, there's a lot of similarities between him and the previous ones. Karlov does a really good job of like portraying like the stiffness of him. The problem I have with the Mummy in this is that I guess it's not the Mummy himself. It's the interactions of the people in the Mummy just seem like jilted and wrong. This is beyond just him, like the way he kills people. This is the way the Mummy has interacted with all the other characters. The people almost treat the Mummy like a slight nuisance, not an actual problem. There's no real actual like fear, concern, or anything until one of them's being attacked by the Mummy. Then it's like paralyzing fear.
Right.
But
even when they're chasing him, there's not a lot of haste.
There's no haste. There's no in all of the other Mummy films, in all of the Frankenstein films, the Dracula, when they are going after the monster, there is a sense of urgency. Mm-hmm. And this one, it's very casual. Well, yep, that's the Mummy, I guess. Well, we're going to keep our eyes out for a mummy. It's a little too casual. I get that people have become to accept the supernatural, but accepting it as reality and as just a condition they have to deal with are very different things. This has gone from the point of accepting it as a real thing to accepting it as just a normal part of life we have to deal with.
Well, right. You think that they would
as
deal
a
with
common nuisance.
Yeah, you think that they would deal with it more like a weather, like severe weather, where it's like, get into your houses, guard your houses. We're running watches. We're making sure everybody's safe. You'd think that the town would be put on a bit of like a high alert because this is literally a supernatural.
Well, even like when the part that culminated that for me was when the lead's like, he's like letting his girlfriend go into the house with the house lady who runs it, and or I don't know what the relationship is there. I think she was like the because I think it was on campus.
She was like the house.
Yeah, I think she was the house mother.
Kind of
I think she was the house mother for a dormitory. But he drops her off there, and it's like, well, I'm gonna lock all the doors. All right, well that seems good enough. Okay, what? This thing has been proven to like burst through walls with ease, and they're like, yeah, just locking your doors will be fine. Yeah. It's just the absolute like just normalcy that they just kind of take this with is insane. It takes a lot of the air out of the film. Like you said, when it ends so darkly, like a real horror film, after the casualty of like everyone just being like, oh, blah, 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 this isn't a big deal, is jarring.
Well, and it also takes them a long time to be like, okay, well, she's connected in some way, but she needs to be protected. Because clearly the way that she's been... Because even like... They find the professor, the first professor, the first victim is the professor who gets strangled by the mummy. They find her passed out outside of his house, and immediately the sheriff, logically is like, well, she's the only person that's like in the scene of the crime. So she's probably like a prime suspect. But almost immediately after they actually look at the body for more than 2 seconds, they're like, oh, there's mold there. He's been strangled to death. Ew. Like they do this whole thing. It's like, clearly it's the mummy. But then the sheriff still kind of treats her like she's the suspect. He doesn't let her flee. No. He doesn't let her get away from this area when it's clear that it's like, yes, she has a connection, but it's not.
Which he even says. He's like, I know you didn't kill him, but you are involved in this somehow, and I don't know how.
And they don't protect her more, and they don't let her flee. They don't let her do anything. They're very casual about it, where it's like, you're clearly connected. I'm not going to do anything about it.
That is what bothered me. It was this clever moment where he could put the dots together and then does nothing with it. That's what I'm talking about. The whole film is like that, where it's like people are making it's if Van Helsing were like making all these connections and then just decided to walk away instead of actually face Dracula. That's what this movie was. The whole time, they're doing these clever moments and really good skill shots and these moments of realization with the characters, and then do nothing with it for the rest of the film until it's too late. And it's just really weird, really jarring, and that kept taking me out of the film because they would set... This is the Invisible Man we just watched. Similar problem. Like what it was is that it would do these setups, like they were going to do something with it, and then they'd fall flat.
Yeah, they just let
and so it just hurts you. Like you're just drowning in it. As for the
he says when the lady literally drowns.
As for the iconic side of that, as the flip side, the iconic nature of this, to me, what kind of like redeems this film and gives it like a lot of, is it's a steady hooking, and it's kind of funny. Like it's got a little bit of humor to it, in situational humor. Like we were making a little fun of it. It's fun to watch. It's not like a rough watch. It's a fun movie to watch.
Compared to the last film that we watched, this is much better than...
yes.
I don't even remember the name of the thing we just watched.
The Invisible Man's Revenge.
Yes, I've purged it. I've purged
nope,
it.
I will bring it back because you will forget. No, but the thing about this film is it was interesting to watch, and it suffers from a little bit of plot issues. It has a plot, and it has a plot that it's actually very simple. Is actually its problem. Yeah. It's not that it doesn't have one. It's that the plot is super simple and it resolves too quickly.
Well,
but
it's so
fun.
simple that because the movie is so short, it's not surprising that it's short. But you feel kind of gypped because of how short it is. Because of how simple
it feels like there should have been something at the end to give it more purpose. But the film is fun to watch. But what brings it up to another level is just. There's a lot. It was the opposite side of the ugly. The characters being, kind of nonchalant about the mummy, but its iconicness in the fact that it is one of the films that has taken the kind of acceptance of the paranormal as a normal in society. Mm-hmm. So many of the other films, the paranormal was understood by certain characters, like in Dracula, Van Helsing in the first and second Daughter of Dracula. Van Helsing remembers these things. Like he's part of this lore.
Well, he's studied it.
Yes.
He's spent a lot of time studying
but a lot of other people don't believe it, but he knows about it.
Yeah, he's an expert.
The Frankenstein, the villagers, are aware of Frankenstein. There's cliques.
After the first one,
yes.
they're experts on.
But in this one, the professor just talks about the mummy in open class in archaeology as absolute fact. Because it's just become such a common, normal thing in their society that it's like, this is just how it is. And
it's like the Invisible Man. Whenever he shows up, the police department's like, well, we know exactly what to do with him. Yeah.
But in every single one of those, there's a little bit of doubters, or people aren't sure, or it's been long enough, people have forgotten. The Mummy took this and said, no, this is a lineage thing. Like, these people know about this, and they're sharing it with other people. They're not, every time they've kept it to themselves. Because they're afraid of what people might think of them or their reputations. But in this one, the professor's just sitting there teaching in college straight up. And they're like, well, is it real? It was in the newspapers. There were witnesses. We all saw it. We saw the proof. When it comes back, they're just like, yep, that's the mummy. That's kind of different, where the whole of society has accepted it as reality and just deal with it the best they can. Mm-hmm. I just don't like how nonchalantly they did. That's that double-edged sword there. Like, they got a little too comfortable with the mummy theory to the point where he's just a common robber. Like, this dude is a supernatural beast that can't die. You can't just be nonchalant about that. You can accept it without being a little too, you know what I mean? Like, it's a little too casual here. Oh, hey, bro, there's the mummy guy. Yeah, he just murdered Steve over there. Isn't that great? So anyway, I was talking about, no, do something about it. That's mine. I'm done with it. Oh.
All right. So usually what we like to do after we do the good, bad, ugly, iconic is we talk about if you were given the job of making a modern remake of this film, or if you had to make a film very similar to this, same plot in modern times, what are some things that you would do? So what are some things that you would do to bring the Mummy's ghost to a modern audience?
As we talk about this thing, and I know like how much you love like the 99 Mummy, and I like it too. Every time we see these movies, I see more of the influence in that film.
Yeah.
There was a lot of influence that came from this one. Like I keep watching the films thinking like, man, they took a lot from this film. This must have been what inspired it. Oh, and this one. Oh, and this one. Oh, he watched all of them. He like sat down and watched every Mummy movie in a row. Like, how do I modernize this? I'm starting to feel like that now because I'm like, I get now so strongly why the Mummy was made to be like a supernatural force. Because in the original films, he was just like a lanky, slowly moving. I think they do insinuate strongly that he does have kind of some mystic power to like fear people. It's just
a little bit, but
it's just not very well executed.
It's not well executed, but the other thing too is if you think about it, the first Mummy movie, that Mummy was a supernatural force in and of himself.
Yes. And he was clever and suave and was undercover, and which reminded me a lot of the newer film too. To modernize this, I think what you would have to do is you have to be more clear on the supernatural effect, or, and this is my take on it, is the opposite take entirely. I would take a parody form of this and do a film that's very similar to this, but have the Mummy's inability to like get up to people quickly be a joke. So I made the joke like we were watching it, like he's like coming after him and the dude's like, oh, and he's coming after him. Just like, oh, and then he's sitting down taking a smoke break, and then he's coming after him again the next scene because he's just so slow.
Oh, it's kind of like that scene from Austin Powers with the steamroller.
Yes.
It's across the way. Yeah.
That's what it feels like. You have to do. I would just go full parody with it, and but like do it like a Mel Brooks style where it's like paying homage to it as doing a parody. So the Mummy thing is like a silly thing, but it's still like a dark horror comedy, and the Mummy still does win in the end. Like the Mummy gets what he's going to, and give it a little more closure after the Mummy takes him down.
Well, or you can, if you're doing the parody thing, you can actually probably finish it a very similar way, but just make it more apparent that literally the dude's just like, wait, why am I crying?
Exaggerate it. She goes in the water, and he goes, no, and then the last bubble goes, he goes, oh well, and then just walks away.
No, what he does is he's super emotional about it, and then we see her face like all wrinkly and like mummifying, and he just goes, oh. And then she drowns, and he just goes, oh well.
Yeah. That's what I'd have like the nonchalantness of all of the townspeople be the comedy. Like exaggerate it just take this exact film as it is and just further exaggerate everything. The Mummy's slowness is more exaggerated. The terror is even more, like people are even more afraid like than they should be, but they're fully nonchalant the rest of the film. Like everybody's like, oh, the sheriff's like, there's sheriff, don't you know there's a mummy in town? It's like, yeah, and what do you want me to do about it? Like, nobody cares.
There's only a supernatural force that can't die. So what do you want me to do? Put him in handcuffs?
Like just nobody cares.
Death couldn't confine him.
Like nobody cares. The priest guy is like overly horny and just like all over just that. Just
this is the first time he's seen a woman.
Just exaggerate it all. That's what I would do. I would do a Mel Brooks style, just exaggerated horror film. I think would be a fun thing to do with this film because it gives you all so much of the material already. You just gotta push it a little further. That's it. That's all you'd have to really do.
Right, like they're all paralyzed in fear whenever he's in eyesight, but whenever he's not, they're very slow to try to find him.
Yeah.
There's like
there was a point watching this film, I was starting to think this was a parody of the Mummy films. Like they started to go a little humorous, but then it goes off the deep end. So I don't know. What about you?
Well, there's a couple of things that you can do to kind of like modernize it, I think. One thing though, not really related to like how I would rewrite it though, but you mentioned that, the town just kind of accepts that the supernatural thing happens. And the way that you were describing it kind of reminded me of, there's a horror book, it's called Hex. And essentially, it's a town that's held captive by a witch from like the 1600s. And they've just accepted her as like a normal part of life. Because it's just this supernatural force. They don't mess with her because she has the ability to just completely just murder you. So they never touch her. They do everything they can not to mess with her. but they just kind of accept that she's this supernatural force, and
she's just part of the town.
They've become a little nonchalant about her. So that you could take an angle like that with this mummy that's been roaming around for 30 years because he got summoned. And maybe it is a thing where they're just kind of starting to be like, well, there's not really, he's just a mummy. All he does is he just kind of shambles around. He doesn't really do much of anything. You can kind of avoid him pretty well. But then it starts murdering people. And they start trying to put clues together, and you make it kind of a whodunit, where it's like, why did he become active? Why is he actually like not just like shambling around in his cage?
You would have it like, instead of him being gone for 30 years, he's just been shambling around the town aimlessly for the last 30 years, and everybody just accepts him as a part of the community.
Yeah, and because he's supernatural, nobody dares touch him. Nobody dares, invoke the curse.
It's like he hasn't killed anyone in a while, and we're not agitating him. He's not bothering us. We're just a mutually assured destruction moment. Just don't touch each other and everything's fine kind of a thing.
So, I mean, you could take that angle. And it could be a thing, too, where like the kids don't take him seriously or something like that. Somebody gets a hold of his sacred rituals and makes the tea, and suddenly he's like fully activated kind of thing. You could kind of take it like that. Just that'd be fresh. That'd be a different perspective.
Like the kids accidentally summoned the demon kind of plot, where it's like they didn't have malintent, but they reactivated the creature. Yeah,
kind of like you could go with something like that. Or, I mean, this is the fourth film in the Mummy franchise. I don't really remember how we rewrote the third one, because it's been forever. We've had such a gap. Well, we've had such a gap between these that I can't really even keep.
I don't remember how. I do remember that we thought it was kind of weird how like the couple at the end just kind of like walks away nonchalantly at it. But if you kept that in there, that works really well for this one. Well, the mummy's just a part of our lives now.
Well, right. And the thing too, I think the way that we ended it was like the mummy actually got destroyed. It made sense that the mummy was destroyed at the end of this film. Well, the fact he came back is weird.
No, the house burned. He was inside it. They never actually checked to make sure he burned to death, and he's a mortal being. So no, it makes sense he's still alive.
Well,
that's like Frankenstein. Like every time they try to kill him, like he was created by science, so he wasn't created to be living naturally. Therefore, he cannot be killed naturally.
Right. I'm saying, like, well, in universe, it does make sense. He could be summoned back. He's an immortal being. He's not just going to die. The issue is this: that the last film was about the consequences of touching the tomb.
Yes.
You broke the sacred ground. You brought forth this ancient evil. It's come back to destroy what you have built based off of it. And that's what I took from it.
Yeah.
Was I made it a thing where it literally was everything about their lives got torn down, built off of the fact that they desecrated his tomb. So that story is very, very wrapped up. So this movie, if you're really going to bring the same mummy back, you almost have to kind of reset the canon of sorts with a new cast of characters. There's a new reason that he's coming after them. There's something else that they've brought him back for. To
be fair, in this movie, the whole plot was just for them to go recover the mummy. They had they had already completed the mission of killing everybody in the chain, so they had no reason to hurt or take anybody else.
And so what they did was they just decided to, I think what they did was just kind of fulfill his curse, essentially, was he would get his love back, I think was what they decided to do. They were like, we'll finally put him to rest permanently if he gets his love. I think was why he even came back in the first place. It wasn't just to like wreak havoc. It was...
Well, he only came back because he was summoned by the Tanith leaves that were the professor did without thinking about it. The
professor summons him back, but the priest came back, I think, to put a rest to the curse, because his whole thing was
they were supposed to bring the body of the princess back to Egypt as well as the mummy, so they could go back to.
But the princess's spirit ends up in the girl, and that complicates matters.
Correct.
So that's the thing, is it's just like you really kind of have to reset it. But the thing is that if in the last book, in the last movie, he's destroyed and the story came to a complete and total conclusion. It is kind of hard to make another mummy movie with very similar canon.
I get that, but I kind of disagree with the completion thing, because the mummy completed his mission, But the mummy still had to return back to Egypt. That was the whole point. It's like they had to go recover him. Like, hey, he completed his mission, but the mummy's still there. We got to go get him.
Yeah.
And why they waited 30 years to do it, I don't know.
Right, and that's
or however long. I can't have been that long because the professor was.
No, the professor was a relatively young man. I think the professor.
He was younger than the old one, but I didn't think it was that. I don't know. It was like 20 something. Anyway, it happens later. I don't know why. The only weird thing I thought is they waited so long to recover the mummy.
And that's
that. Like they waited for 25 years to go get his corpse out of the burning house was just a weird thing, but whatever. Or they had to rebuild the order, I guess, because all the horny old men that ran it before kept crashing and burning it over the women they were kidnapping.
Well, that's another thing. How did they continue to keep this cult going?
It could have been
generations.
The way I see it is it was like a different sect of the cult, and they came to the understanding that the other one like collapsed, and they were coming to like fulfill like their mission. Well, the old guys failed. We've rebuilt. Let's go get the mummy. Who knows?
I don't know. It is just like I'm having a bit of a hard time with rewriting this one just because of how this thing has literally been resurrected, killed, resurrected, killed, resurrected, and killed.
That was the same problem the Frankenstein ones had, but the Frankenstein one is done a little more.
Well, it's more about the doctor's hubris more than it is about.
And it's cleaner of a transition between film. This one, they just, I don't know, they keep manufacturing reasons to bring it back, but
yeah, and this one feels very manufactured. That's part of the reason I have a hard time rewriting this.
Yeah, this one feels plot driven. Like it is. This is very much one of those. This happens because the plot demands it, not because it makes sense. There's quite a bit of that in here, and it does kind of pull. It holds the movie back. It could have been a lot better with very little change, just by giving it a little bit more. Just clarity. If it had been given a little bit more clarity, and the ending wasn't so abrupt, or even if the ending was as abrupt, but was led into better. There was no foreshadowing of leading into that led to that. It just happens abruptly and it's over.
Well, and there's so much because of how short this film is. There is so much that you could actually really explain more. Like, for instance, so the love interest was a professor, but not a professor. She was like an assistant, but she wasn't a student. But her boyfriend was a student. And she's Egyptian, and that's why she has.
I think she was a student and she was working at the school.
Right, but that's the thing, not really explained. You don't really have their relationship too much explained. You don't have a lot of this connection explained. This film could have used a lot more time actually developing the characters and getting more into the story. It feels very bare bones and very much like. It almost feels like maybe what they were doing was they were like, well, we have to wrap up the canon of this last film in order to show that this mummy can come back, because we got another film that we're currently writing that we're going to definitely release 4 months from now. That's almost what it feels like. It's like
it does feel like a rush job.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. It could have been aired out a little better, I think. Like you said, just more time, more development. Don't rush in the beginning. It felt a lot like the earlier film, first 3 films, where the beginning story is rushed quite a bit to get to like the meat of the plot,
and then the ending's abrupt.
And then the ending's abrupt. Yeah. But Dracula did it better. So
Dracula and Frankenstein did it better.
Did it better. Yeah.
Speaking about things doing better, one of the ways that we try to improve is by reading your guys' comments. If you guys have suggestions or your thoughts about the Mummy or the Universal monsters or even future projects you would like to see from us, we'd like to hear from you guys in the comments. Otherwise, if you like this video, be sure to like it. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing for more Universal monster revisits and other things. We like to watch old movies, B movies, new movies. So if movies interest you, this channel will interest you. Otherwise, I don't really have anything else. We like to put a plug, not sponsored, but if you want to follow along, we are watching the Universal Classic Monsters Blu-ray box set for the 100th anniversary of the Universal Studios. This box set has gorgeous films. All the films just look absolutely stunning. They've redone a lot of the audio, and it's just a lot of fun revisiting these classic films. So if you're interested in following along with us, this is the box set that we are going through. Otherwise,
They do look really good on this.
yeah, they stunning, all of them. You have any closing thoughts?
Nope.
All right then, we'll see you guys in the next video.
Thanks for watching.